Yes, I'm a dragon. I breathe smoke and fire. None of this frost mist, ice dragon stuff. I am a fire dragon powered by R'hllor TM. My heart shines with the fire of R'hllor, and I hope yours does too. Although I will mention that my roommate and esteemed YouTube colleague, Quinn's Ideas, stayed up all night last night and made a new video about death and cold and winter. And it's quite good, and I recommend it. Of course, all of Quinn's videos are fantastic. That's the Quinn's Ideas YouTube channel. Don't know if you guys noticed, but he did put out a video like literally an hour ago called Death. And it's about the sort of the meaning of death and the long night and sort of what George is doing with the primal esoteric fear of winter. So very cool. But today we are here to talk about symbolism. Symbolism of the others. The ice dragon. You can see him looking over my shoulder here. And we are going to talk about actual ice dragons. They are fun as a fantasy beast. However, we're really going to follow up on the sort of Night's King Azor Ahai ideas. Hopefully you guys have all watched the video that I put out yesterday. Night's King Azor Ahai. Or if you listen to my older podcasts, Blood of the Other and Moons of Ice and Fire, a lot of those ideas were there in their infant form. But basically what we're going to do today is I've got a little bit of scripted material. We're going to talk about the nature of fire magic and ice magic and how those two things come together. Because, of course, the idea that the Night's King was Azor Ahai has some pretty interesting implications as far as the magic goes, right? Azor Ahai is the warrior of fire. He has a flaming sword. He's, worshipped by the followers of R'hllor. Everything has to do with fire and blood, dragons. Valyrian steel seems to be kind of like the Valyrians trying to reproduce Lightbringer, trying to make a sword with blood magic, just like Lightbringer was forged with. So everything about Azor Ahai, I don't know how to tell you this, associated with fire, very clearly. But then you have the Night's Queen, who, as I proposed, is not a corpse queen in that she is herself a corpse, but rather a corpse queen in that she is the queen of corpses, because she's the mother of the others. She's think about her as an ice sorceress like Melisandre, but frosty and cold, with skin as cold as ice and pale as the moon. And so what you have is the ultimate incarnation of dragons and fire magic, Azor Ahai. I mean, we don't even know if Azor Ahai was one person or a type of person or what. But first and foremost, Azor Ahai is an archetype or a figure, and everything associated with Azor Ahai is fire, dragons. So we have this fiery seed being given to Night's Queen, whose skin is as cold as ice. Presumably her womb is as cold as ice as well. And so we've got an interesting chemical reaction, right? We've got this fire magical seed, this blood of the dragon seed, being placed in the icy incubation chamber of Night's Queen's womb. And out comes the others, right? So, like I said, I've got a little bit of scripted material today I'm going to run through, probably less than 20 minutes or so. And then I will start taking questions and chatting it up. So, yeah, first of all, let me just ask you how you guys are enjoying the Night's King video. It seems to be doing well. YouTube metrics are telling me that it is being looked upon favorably. Also, the Night's Queen video from a couple weeks ago seems to be doing very well. So thank you, everyone, for watching that and sharing and recommending it and leaving comments and upvoting and all that kind of stuff. Ice Dragon Pure Water. Yeah. Shout out to the Migos. Can't say ice chains without thinking about Migos, man. Trying to, once I figured out that you can actually put less than 30 seconds of basically any movie or film in a video without having copyright issues, you guys have noticed I've started putting like more little movie clips and things in my video just for humor's sake. You guys know I like to make jokes. So hope you're enjoying those little touches in the videos, trying to put some of my personality in there and all that. But like I said, gonna dive right into this idea of ice and fire magic. Yeah, actually, Smitty, that's a good catch. Some people have noticed that Targaryens have purple eyes, and of course, red and blue, purple's right in the middle of them. So could that be implying some sort of ice and fire lineage? It could be. You know, if you think about it, a lot of the what George does do is occasionally gives us Targaryens with blue eyes, like Valar Targaryen, instead of purple eyes. And when you have a blue-eyed Targaryen, they really do start to look a lot like an other, because the others have white hair, and a Targaryen, they're usually silver and gold hair, but also can include platinum white. So George does show us dragon people turning into ice people sometimes, and whenever you have a Targaryen with blue eyes, that's a key thing to look for. Queen Alysanne, for example, it becomes a Night's Queen figure, especially when she gets old. She's given the snow white hair and ice, cool blue eyes, or ice eye, eyes like cool ice, or some sort of cold association with her blue eyes. So very easily that Targaryen look can, lean towards icy symbolism, to your point, Smitty. And George does do some interesting stuff with that. So yeah, we're going to talk about Darkstar a little bit today. He's got some cool Night's King Valyrian symbolism to unpack as well. So in the last video, Night's King Azor Ahai, which again, I hope you guys watched that yesterday, I blew all of your minds, hopefully, by showing you that Night's King was Azor Ahai. Well, let's say I convinced some of you that it's a plausible enough theory to keep watching videos about it anyway. How about that? In all seriousness, what I did show you is that the characters like Stannis Baratheon and Jon Snow are simultaneously playing the archetypal roles of Azor Ahai and Night's King. And I showed you how their symbolism seems to depict an Azor Ahai person becoming frozen and transforming into Night's King. Most importantly, they, through symbolism, show us a fiery dragon lord Azor Ahai person giving his seed and soul to Night's Queen to make the others. So that's what we're going to talk about today, the raw idea of the others being fathered by a blood of the dragon person, what that means, and why ice dragons are super cool. We're also going to cover a couple of icy wedding scenes, which seem to work as parallels to Night's Queen and King, because that's going to help explain what is going on magically when a fiery dragon gives his seed to a magical woman as cold as ice. And let me just, where is it? I got some, vitamin water. Oh, and you know what? I need to open my Slack as well. Or not Slack, Discord. We don't do Slack anymore. That ended in a blaze of unglory. We do Discord now. So let me open Discord so I can get the questions from Jasleen and Rod Dammit and whoever else is there. Got a few friends helping out these days. Let's see, super chats and live stream. Here we go. Sir Slorp, Chow AJ. All right, guys, cool. So I've got that up now. I can see that. Cool. Got a team of people working to help me get it all together. Hey, Scorpiax the Golden. And here we go. Just put this here. Sorry, I've got like 4 windows open just so I can sort of manage everything. Blah, 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 blah. You don't care. Get on with the show. Okay, here we go. And, now I've got one too many windows open. I'm drowning in windows. Pardon me. The script. Where's the script? There she is. So let's start off today's video right. Let's talk about magical sex. Yay! Magic sex. Everyone likes that. As it relates to Night's Queen and King making the others, of course, because what we're going to find is more evidence that the others were fathered by a dragon. Night Queen's icy nature was fundamental to her being able to birth the white shadows. We talked about that. And we can see that her shadow children do indeed take after her. They have her blue star eyes and her white as snow coloring, and that cute nose. But what about the father here, the sperm donor, if you will? If the others are shadow clones of Azor Ahai, how does that affect things? Well, as I laid out in Dragon Lords of Ancient Ahai a couple months back, the basic evidence about Ahai having been the capital of a pre-Valyrian Dragon Lord civilization suggests that Azor Ahai, whose myth comes from Ahai, was actually a full Dragon Lord. That's not really controversial, since the prophecy of Azor Ahai's rebirth has him waking dragons, And pretty much all the Azor Ahai parallel figures are either dragon lords like Aegon the Conqueror, Daenerys, and eventually Jon Snow, wannabe dragon lords like Euron Crowseye, or symbolic dragon lords like Stannis, who is a little bit blood of the dragon and lives on Dragonstone. And as a few of you pointed out in the comments, the Baratheon line was founded by Orys Baratheon, who took the daughter of the last Storm King to wife, but Orys Baratheon is heavily implied as a bastard brother of Aegon the Conqueror. So the entire line of Baratheon, the symbolism, is a joining of dragon and stag man, essentially. That's how you can look at it. We're not going to talk about stag men too much today, but for those of you who know what I'm talking about, the Durrand and Storm Kings have the Garth the Green symbolism, and so when a bastard brother of Aegon the Conqueror, Orys Baratheon, takes one of the daughter of the stagman, that's actually some Azor Ahai Nissa Nissa stuff, isn't it? We've got Nissa Nissa being the daughter of the Storm King, and being the daughter of a Garth the Green figure implies her as an elf woman, as I always like to say. And then you've got Orys Baratheon marrying her in order to gain legitimacy. In fact, he puts on the horns and starts taking up the trappings of the Durrandon by marrying the daughter. So it's exactly the scenario that I've been proposing, where Azor Ahai grabs Nissa Nissa, marries her, and does whatever horrific blood magic ritual with her in order to gain power of the Weirwood Net, to put on the antlers, which represent the branches. So represents him going into the tree. So there you go. Just off the top of my head, there's some Orys Baratheon mythical astronomy confirmation. I mean, the pattern is everywhere, guys. That's all I can say. It's everywhere. That's why I have so many podcasts and they're so long. George is cool. He doesn't give us one little clue. He gives us this repeating pattern over and over and over again so we can see it. And then once you see it, you kind of can't unsee it. But in any case, Azor Ahai, full Dragon Lord. All of the Azor Ahai figures implied as Dragon Lords. Like I said, Aegon, Dany, Jon, Euron, Stannis, etc., etc. So when thinking about Azor Ahai as a possible father of the others, we should think about him as a blood of the dragon person, essentially, as someone associated with fire magic. Azor Ahai wielded a magical flaming sword, title Warrior Fire, like I said. So he may have even wielded raw fire magic like the priests of R'hllor do, like Melisandre and Makora. He could have been magically transformed like Melisandre is, fully powered by R'hllor, TM. So, in my opinion, this fiery dragon element is reflected in the burning nature of the ice magic of the others, which is one of the few things I intentionally left out of the others family of symbolism from the last couple videos. So when Will first sees a White Walker in the Game of Thrones prologue, it says, Will saw its eyes, blue, deeper and bluer than any human eyes, a blue that burned like ice. Ice that burns? Well, that's delightfully juxtapositious, isn't it? This line about the burning ice eyes of the others is, of course, set up a few pages earlier by Garrett's very poetic description of dying of frostbite. Frostbite itself functions very well as a symbolic parallel to being transformed into a being powered by ice magic, since it's literally a process by which flesh and blood humans turn into popsicles. And this idea of ice that burns is in fact embedded within Garrett's description of frostbite. So here it is. It was the cold, Garrett said with iron certainty. I saw men freeze last winter, and the ones before when I was half a boy. Everyone talks about snows 40 feet deep and how the ice wind comes howling out of the north. But the real enemy is the cold. It steals up on you quieter than will. And at first you shiver and your teeth chatter, and you stamp your feet and dream of mulled wine and nice hot fires. It burns, it does. Nothing burns like the cold. There you go. So this warning given to Waymar about the burning cold seems like very clear foreshadowing for Waymar's impending death at the hands of the others and their burning ice eyes that comes only pages later, as well as for Waymar's own transformation into a blue-eyed ice white. Thus, we can see that this idea of cold that burns has been woven through the first chapter of the series thematically, and therefore must be an important aspect of the others. And indeed, it's mentioned every time the others or whites appear. Later in A Game of Thrones, Jon confronts the white in Mormont's chamber, and it has eyes like blue stars burning. And this simply kicks off a long string of similar descriptions of burning blue star eyes throughout the novels, which everyone no doubt remembers. Perhaps my favorite is Gilly, describing the others to Jon in A Clash of Kings, which triggers Jon's memory of his own encounter with the White in Mormont's chamber. "The cold gods," she said, "the ones in the night, the white shadows." And suddenly Jon was back in the Lord Commander's tower again. A severed hand was climbing his calf, and when he pried it off with the point of his longsword, it lay writhing, fingers opening and closing. The dead man rose to his feet, blue eyes shining in that gashed and swollen face. Ropes of torn flesh hung from the great wound in his belly, yet there was no blood. "What color are their eyes?" he asked her. "Blue, as bright as blue stars, and as cold." She has seen them, he thought. Craster lied. So I really like this scene because you can really just feel the whispered terror here of two people who have seen these blue star-eyed demons and they've been traumatized by them. It's really just a great scene. So when Sam recounts his own horrific experience at the Fist of the First Men in A Storm of Swords, he's very similar. He remembers the eyes of the whited snow bear, thinking, bright blue, just as Jon said. They shone like frozen stars. Now, frozen stars don't really exist unless you're referring to meteorites as fallen stars, which turn to cold metal. Although those kinds of frozen stars wouldn't glow anymore, of course, unless... Well, okay, never mind. We won't talk about dawn right now. In actual fact, blue-tinted stars, the ones in the sky, are the second hottest type of star after white stars. And, well, it's mostly beside the point. But the point here is that what we have here with this cold star and burning ice language is yet another interesting marriage of seemingly opposite qualities, like a white shadow, or frozen fire, or black fire. It's a song of ice and fire, after all, and George loves to juxtapose those things with one another, as opposed to rendering them as purely separate and opposing forces. So on Team Fire, for example, we have obsidian, named as frozen fire, and suggested as a potent weapon because it manages to combine the elements of ice and fire. George loves to say that fire consumes and ice preserves, right? So with frozen fire, we have the usually fleeting and temporary fire element frozen and fixed in place to make knives that kill the others. Of course, real obsidian is created when volcanic magma cools under specific conditions. So George is really just personifying natural qualities as magical when he calls obsidian frozen fire and imbues it with the power of magical fire. Not only does frozen fire kill ice demons, of course, we've also seen that dragon glass candles can actually produce some weird sort of unquenchable magic flame. So obsidian, dragon glass, frozen fire really does have fire frozen inside of it. Then on Team Ice, instead of frozen fire, we apparently have ice that burns. The related idea of stars, which are cold, also suggests some sort of cold fire, fire which has somehow been transformed into a cold star. So where did the others get this cold fire? Why does their ice burn? Well, this is the part where I say that this fiery aspect to the White Walker ice magic is, of course, a reflection of Azor Ahai, having fathered the others. If Night's King was a dragon lord whose seed and life fires went into the creation of the others, well, then what may have happened is that the icy cold womb of Night's Queen took that fiery dragon seed, sort of flipped it to ice, creating ice demons with burning cold blue star eyes. Think of Sam's description of the blue star eyes again. They shone like frozen stars. That frozen star is Azor Ahai, more or less. Or I suppose you could say that it's his magical fire that Night's Queen drew upon to create the others. That's the end of the first section. I've got two sections here, and I see Scorpiax the Golden, Noob Smoke 92. By the way, is that like a Noob Cybot Mortal Kombat reference? Been meaning to ask you about that. Hey, LML, what do you think of the idea that the Amethyst Empress resurrected form is Night's Queen? Her essence, red, goes to Lightbringer, and since her eyes are purple, it becomes blue since the red is gone. Yeah, again, working with the color symbolism that we were just talking about. So I didn't mention the Amethyst Empress and the Bloodstone Emperor in the last couple of videos because I'm trying to keep it confined. And you don't really have to talk about Bloodstone and Amethyst to sort of get the Azor Ahai Night's King thing. However, Bringing the Bloodstone Emperor and Amethyst Emperor stuff into it, of course, only complements the picture. So I've already suggested that Nissa Nissa and the Amethyst Empress are the same person. Daenerys, for example, strongly shows us both of them all the time, which is a big clue about that. But of course, they're just similar stories. If the Bloodstone Emperor murdered the Amethyst Empress, supposedly this caused the Long Night. But then separately, we have Azor Ahai murdering Nissa Nissa, and this cracks the moon, which I have suggested is the cause of the Long Night. Once you figure that out, you see these as parallel events. Blood magic murders, they're actually the same story. Bloodstone Emperor Azor Ahai, Amethyst Empress Nissa Nissa. I've got lots of videos about that in the Bloodstone Compendium if you want the longer story. But bringing those ideas into this makeup, we talked in the live stream last week about whether or not Nissa Nissa and this Night's Queen are the same person, or maybe it's not the same person. It would be more like Nissa Nissa dies, her spirit is in the Weirwood, and then it comes back out somehow as the Night's Queen, reincorporates, or perhaps, again, as my friend Ball the Bard likes to say, her theory is that Night's Queen is the Weirwood tree, or that her spirit lives inside the Weirwood, and the whole Night's King, Night's Queen encounter took place basically inside the Weirwood net. These are all different sort of variations on the same idea. But all of that suggests that perhaps this dead Nissa Nissa Amethyst Empress spirit, reemerges as the Night's Queen and sort of has her revenge on Azor Ahai, or you could even look at them as doomed lovers reuniting. It's unclear whether or not, Azor Ahai murdered Nissa Nissa, or if Nissa Nissa was like totally into the beliefs and she willingly gave herself, just like the myth suggests. We can't know the truth of that. So it's possible that they are actually, they're doomed lovers, and Azor Ahai, killed her thinking it was a good thing and it was actually a bad thing, and then spent his whole life trying to find her again in the Weirwood net. If you want to look at it that way, it could be that way. But somehow there could be a reuniting thing. I prefer the revenge thing because I think the symbolism strongly suggests that Azor Ahai is murdering Nissa Nissa against her will, breaking into the Weirwood net against the will of the woods. Think of Waymar in the prologue. Like, everybody's warning him not to go further into the woods. The woods themselves are attacking him. His brothers are like, hey, man, we shouldn't go any further. And he's headstrong, plunging in. Think of the warrior who knew no fear part of Night's King. That's Azor Ahai too. Same thing, just charging in heedless, trying to grab power that isn't his. So that makes the Nissa Nissa murder a murder and a power grab. And I think that makes sense. And if that's the case, and if that's how the others got created, as a side effect of Azor Ahai breaking into the Weirwood net, then Night's Queen, as creating the others with Azor Ahai's magic, kind of is like revenge. It's kind of like playing Azor Ahai or tricking him, taking like, oh, you got in the Weirwoods, look good for you. Well, you don't belong here. So now I'm going to take your power, your fiery dragon power, and sort of use it to create others, which can then drive out the men and the other dragon people who have invaded the Weirwoods or invaded Westeros or whatever it is. So that to me thematically seems like the best match, that the others are a defense mechanism of the Weirwoods, a defense mechanism of Night's Queen, who may be Nissa Nissa, something like that. So great question, Scorpiax. And by the way, if you want to get a question answered, there's two ways to do it. You can, of course, do a super chat through the YouTube system, or you can send in paypal.me. You can put this in your browser. You don't even need a PayPal account, and you can make a one-time donation that way. I do get 100% of the paypal.me donation, so if you're doing a larger donation, definitely appreciate that. You can still ask a question. You have a comments field, you can type it in, and I've got my Gmail open here so that I can periodically check into those and grab your questions when you send them. For example, Tania sent in a 420, and she says, I think it's so exciting to have confirmation of the femme power in the Dawn Age. Can you comment on some of your favorite Dawn Age ladies? Third Millennium Body. Ah, that's your code name. Cool. All right, so yes, I do think it's cool. So the idea that a Stark was a green seer princess, right? So one of the holes in the lore with the green seers and all that is that we've only seen Bloodraven and Bran as Greenseers. So we don't know, can there be a woman Greenseer? Well, there should be able to. There's nothing about penises that make you get it add to your Greenseer power, I don't think. In fact, it's implied that Bran can't have children. And all of this, thematically, all these people who are trying to gain powerful magic are very often depicted as trading in their fertility or their ability to have children in order to get magic power, whether it's literally losing their child like Daenerys did, or Night's King giving his children to be made into others. That's an old theme from folklore that George is pulling on there. You trade in your and you can actually compare this to a very mundane application. You can think about choosing whether or not to have children. When you choose to have children, you're giving up some of your own personal free time and aspirations to devote to raising a child. And, if you choose not to have a child, some people make that choice because they want to spend all their time writing books or something. I don't know. So George doesn't have kids, for example. So this is an old idea from folklore, and kind of getting off track here. But point is, female Greenseers should be able to exist. Yeah, that was total deviation. And of course, in case you haven't watched it, the Blood Moon confirms my theories video, and confirms with air quotes, because it's not total confirmation, but it's pretty good clues. There was supposedly the Nissa figure of the story was a Stark princess who was a Greenseer who hadn't wakened to her powers yet. She doesn't get Nissa she doesn't get killed, but supposedly she's getting married at the time that the long night falls, and the blood moon eclipse is compared to her maiden's blood, the night of her wedding. So there's very strong Nissa vibes. She's supposedly a female Greenseer. So I love that idea. There should be female Greenseers. I think that's basically what Nissa was. And I think I would really like to see Daenerys, and I know this sounds crazy, I'd really like to see Daenerys have some sort of interaction with the Weirwood Net before it's all said and done. I think that it will happen. And there are some really good clues about that, which I'm going to restrain myself from letting out because I want to put them in a video in the future. Now let's stay on topic of freezing fire. Does all of Westeros have underground cavern systems connected? It very well could, because I believe that the Weirwoods may well all be connected underground. When we go underground in Bloodraven's cave, the Weirwood roots seem to go hundreds of feet down, and they're so huge that they essentially can create caverns themselves. They can force, those roots might be created in the caves. And so there well may be caverns under most or all of Westeros. That's an old fantasy trope. Goes back to like the Silver Chair, for example. Chronicles of Narnia. Sorry, I got a little itchy nose going on. Hang on a second. No one likes to see excessive face rubbing. Okay, it's all taken care of. So we can see George's fascination with this idea of freezing fire reflected in the form of the Ice Dragon, which is both a constellation containing the blue pole star of this universe and an actual creature. Of all the queer and fabulous denizens of the Shivering Sea, however, the greatest are the ice dragons. These colossal beasts, many times larger than the dragons of Valyria, are said to be made of living ice, with eyes of pale blue crystal and vast translucent wings through which the moon and stars can be glimpsed as they wheel across the sky. Whereas common dragons, if any dragon can truly be said to be common, breathe flame, ice dragons supposedly breathe cold, a chill so terrible that it can freeze a man solid in half a heartbeat. They also supposedly melt when slain, just like the others do, so I think it's clear that this ice dragon is essentially a White Walker dragon, right? That's what it sounds like. An elemental being made of ice and held together by magic. It breathes cold, just like a fire dragon would breathe fire. And so again, we can see that George has essentially taken classic fire dragon ideas and just translated them into the language of ice. The ice magic of the White Walkers and the ice dragon isn't slow and passive like a natural freezing process. It brings instant death, and it burns like fire. You could even say that it consumes. And consider this: if Azor Ahai fathered the others, then the others are basically kind of like ice dragons themselves. The blood of the dragon, but transformed into ice, frozen blood of the dragon. Many have even noticed that the description of the beautiful others with long, silky white hair almost makes them sound like a Pantene Pro V commercial. No, it makes them sound like Valerians, kind of, right? And that may be intentional. Many people have noticed this. So remember how Sir Barristan Selmy seems to have by far the most others symbolism applied to any of the Kingsguard. We spent a lot of time on Barristan in Symbolism of the Others Kingsguard, so I hope you watched that video. What I failed to mention in that last video is that that suit of white steel, which is ice hard and snow white, actually has a dragon wing helm that goes with it, which makes it actually a suit of ice dragon armor. Arstan Ice Dragon. Now, that's a cool title. That's better than Arstan Whitebeard, I think. I think this is yet another clue that the others do, in fact, descend from the blood of the dragon, that the others are like ice dragons, symbolic ice dragons. And Barristan was transformed into this ice dragon by his queen, just as the Night's Queen made the others. And no, I will not crack open the Daenerys Night's Queen talk just yet. We have to save that for the future, folks. There is some symbolism of that, but we can't talk about that yet. So on the HBO show, we did, of course, get an actual non-symbolic ice dragon, kind of. It was more of a whited dragon than an ice dragon, such as we read about. But it was still plenty cool, pun intended. Whited Viserion, of course, did have those blue star eyes, and he breathed some form, of blue fire. And I think it's clear that they borrowed from George's ice dragon ideas to make it, at least in part, just like they borrowed from the ancient legend of Night's King to make their version of a White Walker King, which we know as Night King. In fact, I can't help but wonder if the basic notion of a Night King who rides an ice dragon doesn't actually come from George too. I mean, I've believed for years that Azor Ahai, the Dragon Lord, became Night's King long before HBO had their Night King raise Viserion from the dead. So when I saw it happen on the screen, I mean, when I saw a Night King riding a dragon, breathing blue fire, well, it basically just seemed right to me. It seemed like one of my theories come to life, and not really my theory. This is, again, I mentioned in the Night King video, Gray Area has really cool videos about this, where she talks about the Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn correlations to Inuluki, which is this Azor Ahai Night King figure who dies, but he doesn't really die. His spirit is in the nether realm, and then it sort of manifests again and is reborn, and he's very much the villain at that point. So it strongly suggests that there could be that kind of Azor Ahai becoming the Night King thing. There's really great correlations between Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn and the Song of Ice and Fire. Recommend Gray's playlist on that. And there's a Between Two Weirwoods video on my channel all about Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn, where I had Gray Area on, and we went over it for like 2 hours. So point is, many of us have been on to this idea that Azor Ahai is the Night's King of Westerosi legend for a long time. And then, so when we saw it on the show, it was just like, yeah, that may have come from George. So the question then becomes, will we see anything like this in the books, right? Well, I think that we will. And there's basically two possibilities. Either the original Azor Ahai turned Night's King. His spirit is somewhere inside the Weirwood net, on the etheric plane, I guess you would say. And then it will somehow manifest itself again on the physical plane. Again, this is very like Inuluki from Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. He's just going to ride an ice dragon out of the heart of winter or something. Maybe. Probably not. I think more likely is that one of the current characters in the story will become a kind of new Night's King. We're going to talk about that in the next couple of videos. And I'm going to do one video each on Jon Snow and Euron Greyjoy, because they are the two people who are most likely to become a leader of the White Walkers in some capacity. And both of them want to ride a dragon or can ride a dragon. So just like Stannis, both Jon and Euron show us a mix of Azor Ahai symbolism and Night's King symbolism. And again, Jon and Euron are by far the two most likely people to ride a dragon who isn't named Daenerys. Euron's got the Valyrian Dragonbinder horn. He's got a Valyrian steel suit of armor. He wants to marry Daenerys with her amethyst eyes and become a dragon lord. Probably steal her dragon. And he has, the sort of evil apocalyptic intent needed to bring on Did I say content? I meant intent. Euron has the sort of evil intent that is needed to try to bring on a new long night, either on purpose or by accident. Now, Jon, meanwhile, is much nicer than Euron, but he's currently dead, and I'm increasingly coming to think that the others may have intentions with his corpse. And Jon, in particular, is basically a perfect manifestation of this frozen blood of the dragon idea that we've discussed just now, because he's, of course, part Targaryen and part Stark. And his parents, Rhaegar and Lyanna, are terrific knights, queen, and king symbols. And, guys, I like to talk about Jon's symbolism. I talked about in this last video his dream of being armored in black ice and his sword burns red in his fist, right? Well, there's a companion scene to this. And everybody who's listened to my old podcast knows where I'm going right now. There's a companion scene to this on the wall with Jon that gives us also the black ice and red fire, which I think is basically a perfect set of symbols for Jon. So you remember in Dany's House of the Undying Dream, she sees a blue rose growing from a chink in a wall made of ice. And so this is one of the easiest things to decode from the House of the Undying Visions. Dany is basically perceiving a vision of Jon here. She's seeing the blue rose, which represents Lyanna, kind of like Jon being her legacy at the wall. It's flowering at the wall because Jon is coming into his own at the wall. He's, gonna level up all the magic and all the prophetic, destiny kind of things that is going to happen to him is going to happen to him there. So a blue rose growing from a chink in the ice wall. This represents Jon very, very clearly. But it's a chink in the wall. So think about the cracks in the wall. Think about like a plant growing from the crack in the sidewalk. That's the blue rose growing from a chink in the wall. There's one other scene where we see symbolism sprouting from the cracks in the wall. And I'll go ahead and pull up the exact quote because I love the quote. It's right at sunset. Jon's looking at the wall. He's thinking about the others. Okay, so Jon Snow turned away. The last light of the sun had begun to fade. He watched the cracks along the wall go from red to gray to black, from streaks of fire to rivers of black ice. Down below, Lady Melisandre would be lighting her night fire and chanting, "Lord of Light, defend us, for the night is dark and full of terrors." "Winter is coming," Jon said at last, breaking the awkward silence. "And with it, the White Walkers." Sorry, I'll stop. The wall is where we stop them. The wall was made to stop them, but the wall must be manned. So, very cool, right? Sunset. So it's, anytime you have a sunset scene, it's suggestive of the long night. And indeed, we're talking about the long night, thinking about the others. Winter is coming. Melisandre is using fire magic to try to get ready to defend us from the night. So it's very much a long night setting here. And then in the cracks of the wall, where previously we've seen the blue rose that represents Jon, we see basically what's happening is the sunlight is catching on the meltwater in the cracks of the wall. When the wall melts, it's said to weep, right? And so what we have is these rivers of black ice. It's basically meltwater in between the cracks of the wall. When the sun catches it, they look like streaks of red fire. But as soon as the sun sets, then they look like rivers of black ice. So again, think about Jon on the wall, armored in black ice, sword of red fire, and he's fighting the foes of the long night, foes that are undead and sculling up the ice like spiders. And so we see Jon's wearing the black ice and he's wielding the burning red sword. This is a very good, obviously, ice and fire, right? Jon is the Song of Ice and Fire. He's the Stark dragon, Rhaegar and Lyanna. That's what we're talking about here. And so basically, if you put all these together, the blue rose, red fire, black ice, this is Jon's symbolism, in other words. And he's kind of like an other, kind of like Azor Ahai. And that's just pretty cool. So that's Jon for you. Now, as far as And let me get my windows back where I need them. Okay, so I've got Lake Twig sending in a super chat. And Jaslina, I'm pulling up the Discord here to check on these as well. What storyline do you most look forward to and why? Mine are Aegon and Euron. You mean Fagon, I'm sure. Grayscale Epidemic and Magical Cataclysm. Fagon's death by Jon's Grayscale. Jon Connington, of course. I am looking forward to definitely all of that. Definitely Euron. I think probably the Comet Long Night sort of, series of events. Anytime I see a chapter that starts with the word Bran, that's when I get the most excited, because Bran chapters going forward are going to be giving us nothing but magical info dump. So really looking forward to that. Really looking forward to seeing how Daenerys brings the Dothraki. I mean, the Daenerys plotline, obviously, looking forward to the most. It's really going to get going. And so, yeah, I'd say Dany, Bran, Euron. Really looking forward to seeing Jon want his spirit wandering around in the Bardo, in the crypts, talking with Lyanna's ghost, maybe having a run-in with Bran and Bloodraven. So, sorry to go for, like, the low-hanging fruit, but, yeah, that magical stuff, that's the same stuff I'm excited about, too, for sure. So, Paladin Pony asks, we know there are ice dragons in Lord of the Rings, D&D, and The Witcher, Game of Thrones. What other stories do you know that have ice dragons? I don't really know of any. They're not common at all. And I think George claims to have sort of invented his version of it. I don't know if he was influenced by whatever's in D&D. I've been told that there are some in there. I'm not sure about The Witcher. I don't really know. I just watched the one season of the Rhaegar show, and I don't know. I haven't read the books or anything, so I don't know about the rest of it. But the thing is that, like, ice by itself just kind of sits there. It's not as exciting as fire. It really isn't. Avalanches are exciting, I guess. But ice just isn't. It doesn't do much. And so I feel like from a sort of literary perspective, as a writer, what George is doing here, he's making the ice magic more fun. He's making it destructive and active and consuming like fire. And that is, like, even more terrifying to me. So that's really what he's getting at. And that's why I led with this topic that I did today, as far as the whole idea of transforming fire into ice. Because we have these, like I said, these three different branches of magic, the fire and the ice and the green seer magic. And everyone's wondering how they connect. Well, this is a big part of how they connect. Azor Ahai giving his fire magic to Night's Queen and creating ice demons, but with burning star eyes. So I just find that to be very cool from a sort of magical alchemy point of view. And like I said, there's two wedding scenes I want to look at in a minute too. And that would be Alice Karstark and Jane Poole. And we'll do that in a second. But I want to take some more questions here, since you guys have been patient while I read through the script. Thank you. Thank you for sending in the super chats, and also to paypal.me, Mythical Astronomy. Next question. Wasn't there an SSM, this is from Toby, where George said there would be one more dragon in the story, but it would be a different sort? I am not familiar with that SSM. I do believe that we will get some sort of ice dragon. So let's talk about that, right? That's a good one. I think there is a chance that we could actually see a whited Viserion, like in the show. I don't think that's crazy. And I think that is in play. Absolutely. I think Euron is probably more likely that Euron will control Viserion with the horn and end up fighting against Dany's dragons that way. But I've also, like I'm saying, Euron could become possessed by a Night's King spirit, could become leader of the others, and that way his taking of Viserion could involve transforming Viserion. Now, it's also possible that George will give us the actual ice dragon that he's speaking of here, with its translucent wings and its eyes, basically its body made of crystal. So we could see that as well. I look forward to your comments on the video or in the chat here about which way you think George will go. But I definitely start here. We need a good dragon fight. No question about that. We only have 3 dragons. So it could be that all 3 fire dragons stay on the same team and end up fighting a natural ice dragon, a White Walker dragon from the Heart of Winter. Seems more likely that Viserion's going to get turned against the other 2. There's ample foreshadowing for that outside of what's in the show. I think that it makes a lot of sense that Viserion is going to be the one that's controlled by Euron with the Dragonbinder horn. Just don't know how and when that's going to happen and go down. But we definitely need 2 dragons to fight. So whether Viserion gets whited by a Night King or by a Night King Euron or just stolen by Euron, we're definitely going to have dragon on dragon action. I think it's clear from Fire and Blood that one of the things George wants to write about is dragon fights. And if you read Fire and Blood, you'll see that most of the time, all the dragons die or get injured or come out worse for wear. Nobody survives. It's always really, really dark and ugly. And so why Viserion and not Rhaegal? Because Rhaegal seems destined for Jon as the green dragon, green seer dragon symbolism, whereas Viserion being cream or white, he's already got the ice dragon symbolism. If you notice, the name Viserion has ice in it, and Viserys has ice symbolism, and Visenya and Vhagar have ice symbolism, ice dragon and ice queen symbolism. So that whole naming tree is pretty much always ice associated. Put it that way. Let's see. Avenue Empire says, George writes several scenes where Jon flexes his sword hand because of the burns he suffered saving Mormont. Do you think Jon will no longer have this tendency once he's revived? That's a funny question. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I do know that the hand symbolism is important, right? So he burns his hand with fire, and then right after that, the next time we see his hand unwrapped from bandages is the one where he's feeding the ravens in Mormont's chamber, and his hands are blood up to the elbow. So he's got fire and blood hands. Seems to me like a fiery version of the cold hand symbolism, whose hands are like, basically like hard black ice, or I think they're compared to coal as well, which is interesting because, of course, coal gets lit on fire, and the whites burn very well as well. So all of that fiery hand symbolism is important. There's a bunch of astronomy stuff with the hand. If you check out the Mountain and the Viper, and the Hammer of Mountain versus the Viper and the Hammer of the Waters, Bloodstone Compendium number 4, talked about all the hand symbolism from the hand of the king to all the hand injuries like Jaime's hand, and also the fist symbolism of the fist of the first men, and many towers which are described as fists. It's all part of the set. Dino Bomb Cake says, could ice dragons be made of the worms just like the others require the sacrifice of human babies? Oh gosh. Probably not. Probably not. I mean, I see the parallel there, but I don't think that's it. To sacrifice the bloodworm children to make ice dragons. That's very cool. I like the thought. Probably not though. The ice dragons really do sound elemental. They don't sound like anybody made them. They sound like something that literally emerges out of the heart of winter somehow. But who knows? Maybe it's Azor Ahai's spirit that literally becomes the ice dragon somehow. I'm not sure. Oh, I like this question from Paladin Pony. Do you think the fire dragons know that the ice dragons exist? Is that why they're scared to go beyond the wall? Maybe. It could be. And of course, he's referring to Queen Alysanne's dragon Silverwing, which 3 times, steered away from the wall when Alysanne tried to fly it over. I think it is more of a magical thing as opposed to the dragons just being afraid of the ice dragon. It seems like the wall itself is a hinge of the world. It's a magical barrier. Or maybe it just feels like really cold. It reeks of cold magic, which is inimical to the dragons. I think the main point of that is that George wanted to hint to us that the dragons aren't just going to fly up north and just roast everything and just melt the others. The cold winter winds of the others will be a problem for the dragons, which is one of the things I liked about the TV show, The Short Night, season 8, episode 3. is that once those foggy cold mists rolled in, you could tell it stifled the dragon fire, made it hard for them to fly and see, and so yeah, it's going to be a tough fight against the others, and I think that's what George is showing us with Alisand's dragon flying away from the wall like that. But it depends. Like I said, if Night's King rides an ice dragon out of the heart of winter, then we'll be like, maybe that's what they're afraid of. We shall see. Bazad Merkanzadeh. Lucifer, your thought on Benjen becoming the Night King or evil Azor Ahai? He was clearly missing. I'm not sure what this question is getting at. I'm sorry, there's a typo in there, and I'm not sure what it's getting at. I don't think Benjen is going to play a big role. I think we will find out what happened to Benjen, but I don't think he's going to be like a big, huge thing. I mean, if you're talking about in terms of symbolism, he's like a Stark that wandered north and got lost, kind of like Bloodraven, or maybe kind of like the Night's King, but it's impossible to say until we get the answer to his story. Once we see the rest of his story, then we might be able to develop a symbolic parallel. But I would like it if he turned up as another Cold Hands. I mean, Jon is going to be a skin changer zombie, and it would be cool. He might need some more zombies to help him fight the others, so it'd be cool if Benjen popped up. But I don't know. I tend to think that we'll get the answer to that, but that it's not going to be like he's going to come back around and play a big role. So Paladin Pony says, I got that one already, the Fire Dragons. Rui Barbosa asks, thoughts on the possibility of the wall having oily black stone or obsidian beneath the ice? And that's sort of black ice, and what gives Melisandre's power up at the wall and keeps the others out. So I do like the idea that there is either fused stone or oily stone somewhere at the base of the wall, making it sort of, like you said, an ice and fire symbol. And also it would make sense to me if, that would point towards the Great Empire of the Dawn having come here and built the foundation of the wall, which then later got covered by ice. And that, to me, would be really cool. That would finish tying the pre-Valerians, Ancient Ashai, Geodonians, whatever you call them, the people of Azor Ahai would really tie them to the last hero and the events of the others in the Long Night even more firmly. So that would be really cool. I would enjoy that. And the symbolism wise, I always talk about the dragon locked in ice. There are so many times where we see symbols of an ice thing, whether it's the wall or any of the icy temples like the Moon Singers and Bravos. There's always this hint about fire inside. This little kernel of fire that's inside the ice. It's trapped in there. It's waiting to sort of reflower and reignite. And I think that's very much tied to the idea of Azor Ahai being an ember in the ashes who's going to spark a great blaze. And Melisandre talks about that a lot. So I definitely look for things popping out of the Weirwood net, things that are frozen, catching fire again. And when you think about the wall, it could definitely have some sort of element of fire inside of it. I think that would make a lot of sense. Winterfell is a great example of this. Winterfell is this outpost against the cold in the north. And it's got these, lords of winter that live there, but everything about it is actually hot. It's got these hot springs which circulate through the castle like a bloodstream. And so that's like, fire and blood, heat and blood being implied. And then there's all this stuff about dragons being hidden in the crypts, whether it's dragon eggs down there or a sleeping dragon that warms the castle. So the Starks are kind of like this frozen fire idea. They're like this little kernel of fire completely surrounded by ice and cold. And their job is to resist the cold and to sort of spark a great blaze when need be. So I think that's one of the symbolic reasons why we see Ned with a Valyrian steel dragon sword, right, to open the story. Yeah. Super chat from 2002. Who do you think will rule Winterfell when all is said and done? I think Jon will be named King of Winter for a short period of time, but will end up, north of the wall like a new Cold Hands by the time it's over. And I think probably Sansa as Queen in the North makes the most sense, I would have to say. I think that part of the show ending they probably got from George. Obviously, the steps in between would be different. But yeah, I think the whole point of grooming Sansa as a political power, which is what her character arc has been doing, is to so that she can be a political power player. And if we've got people like Jon and Bran handling the magical side of things, makes sense that you'd need a Stark that's a little more politically minded. It seems to be pretty obviously where Sansa's arc is going. So it would be kind of wasted if she's not Queen in the North, I would think. So those parts of the show I think are right. I think Jon will be king of the North while he leads the fight against the others to some extent. But ultimately he's a zombie and he's going to either have to die or, roam the North like a new cold hands by the time it's all done, I think. Feel pretty strong about that. Love all the cold emojis. And it's 420. That's what I see is ice wind emojis. Well then, I'll just mute my camera and prepare. So are you guys, first of all, let me ask you this. How did you guys enjoy the Val scene with Jon Snow? I really love that scene. I think it's tremendous. I love Val as a character. She's obviously a fan favorite. The weirwood brooch, the snowy white skin, the blue eyes. I mean, it's really tremendous. And I remember the first day I realized that this was a Night's King and Queen scene where she's north of the wall, coming out of the woods, looking enchanting and lovely. Jon is a Lord Commander. He's not standing on top of the wall. He's standing in front of the wall, but, close enough. And he's bewitched by her beauty. And then he drops that line, are you trying to steal my wolf? Are you trying to steal my ghost? That is to me the height of George, his clever symbolism and the wordplay. I just love it. It's tremendous. Hang on a second. Need to refill my lighter. Come on, lighter. Green screen smoke magic. Woo! Cookies, packing a punch. Thanks for indulging me, all 400 of you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Got to feed the dragon here. Got to breathe fire on y'all. So, Val is amazing. Like I said, when Jon was going to be named the Lord of Winterfell, he would have, assuming Val was okay with the deal, or assuming Jon could sneak into the tower and steal Val successfully, according to Wildling custom, Jon was supposed to be married to Val, which would make her his queen. And even cooler, they were going to take in Gilly's baby monster, the stolen other baby, and raise it at Winterfell as just like Jon, as sort of like a bastard cousin or brother or something to the Trueborn children. So very cool, these repeating patterns. Just that whole, again, the interesting ways that George uses symbolism. He didn't actually have Jon and Val get married, but in order to imply the symbolic parallel, all he has to do is have Stannis suggest it and have Jon sit there and daydream about it for a second. And then boom, we have that symbolic parallel created, even though the plot never actually went there. So love this stuff. George packs it in with these parallels. And like I said, we're going to take a look at Jane Poole and Alice Karstark's wedding next. And you'll see even more very cool stuff that's ultimately going to probably tell us a little bit about Lyanna and Rhaegar, who probably got married in front of a weirwood and, all that. So, here's a good question. Do you think the Horn of Winter has something to do with ice dragons? Well, because the dragon binder is supposed to bind dragons, or maybe comets. And so we have the Horn of Winter. Yeah, I mean, the parallel works, doesn't it? Here's one thing, is that the Horn of Winter, and I'm talking about the little broken horn that Sam and Jon found at the Fist of the First Men that Cold Hands probably hid there for him. It might call the others, because I think Jon blew on it 3 times when they were playing with it, even though it didn't make any sound. And then the others showed up at the Fist of the First Men that night. So not my theory, but someone else has noticed that and suggested that the Horn of Winter might actually call the others somehow. And the others are like ice dragons. So if Dragonbinder binds or calls dragons, and the Horn of Winter has some power over the others, that works as a pretty good parallel. And of course, even without looking at the others as symbolic ice dragons, people have always paralleled the dragons and the others because they're the 2 magical entities in the books representing fire and ice, which are the most prominent. So, yeah. And by the way, Melisandre, she's transforming via fire, right? She's not undead. She's like slowly giving herself to the fire and gradually transforming to the point where she doesn't need to eat or sleep. Now, if she kept going, I think that she might turn into a fire other, possibly. Because think about it. She's like slowly, her flesh she's transforming from a biological entity into like a magical fire entity. She's in an in-between state. So, I mean, just extrapolate it out. If she kept going, eventually she might just turn into a fire elemental. So, yeah. Popping back over to the PayPals. I've got a couple. I've got one from Brett. Thanks, Brett. Hi, LML. My question is self-indulgent. Asking what you think of some foreshadowing I spotted. I think the 79 Sentinels predict Jon's condition post-resurrection. You're right about this. I can tell you already. The Sentinels break their vows, are put into ice, and thereafter can only look north. This mirrors Jon. He breaks his vows, is put in the ice cells, and perhaps thereafter will only care about the War for the Dawn. Not a new idea, but of course, I thought this was interesting. Yep, and in fact, in the Green Zombies series, I talked about this more. In the Green Zombies series, you can see that they're spelled out as dead green men. They've got spears that they're planted in little, like they dig holes in the ice, like they're seed holes. Then the soldiers, the 79 Sentinels, are planted in these little holes, and they're holding spears, which are like a little shoot, a little plant, a little wooden tree shaft, and then they're buried in there. So they're very much like frozen green men, yeah, it's some cool symbolism there. I forget the rest of the scene, but again, that's in the Green Zombies 1, 2, and 3 series if you want the rest of that. Maud Mary sent in one. Thank you, Maud Mary. Do you think the fallout from the Doom of Valyria, huge volcanic eruption, could not only cause the Long Night, but blew all those dragons and Valyrians into the atmosphere where they landed in the north and became the Ice Dragons and the others? No, because the Doom of Valyria happened 400 years ago, and the Long Night happened thousands of years ago. And 400 years ago is within what we'd call historical time. So that's not fudgeable. That's not like, well, it could have been 400 or it could have been 4,000. Like, no, 400 years ago, everyone knows when the Doom happened. That was during historical Westeros and many other nations that had written history at the time. So the Doom of Valyria did not cause a Long Night, which is actually proves to us that the Long Night could not have been caused by a volcano. Because if George wanted magical volcanoes to cause a long night, the Doom would have done it. It was an entire peninsula of volcanoes all exploding at once. It couldn't possibly have been any bigger. And really, it should have caused a long night, to be honest. Like, when the Earth has had those little periods of global darkness, some of them have been caused by volcanoes, absolutely. There seems to have been one in like 600 AD from previous Krakatoa explosion I was just reading about, or watching a video about on YouTube. But so no, the dragons, the Doom wasn't in the Long Night, and that's the dragons didn't get blown north. I don't think so. No, I'd have to say no. I think you're pulling my leg out a little bit on that. And let's see, I got a couple more from June. Keep up the good work. Thanks for entertaining us. Thank you, June. And here's one from James. Thanks for all the symbolism. Alrighty then. Thanks, guys. Very much appreciate it. Coming back to StreamYard. Did I miss anything? Okay, looking good. All right. The explosion that happened at Hardhome, that's a hard one to pin down. There might be some volcanic activity there. The screaming caves sound like volcanic magma caves, lava tubes, very strongly. So could have simply been a volcanic explosion. It could have been some magic involved in there. Also like the dragon bomb tinfoil, that the part of the explosive effect of the doom was caused by blowing up dragon eggs. The dragon eggs have explosive potential, and that this is also potentially what happened at Harrenhal not Harrenhal, sorry, Summerhall, when Dunk was trying to hatch 7 eggs with a bunch of wildfire and magic. That's why the explosion was so big, is because dragon eggs can become bombs. If you remember, Euron sold a dragon egg to the Faceless Men. Why the Faceless Men want a dragon egg? Are they going to try to hatch it? Well, if it's a bomb, potentially that's why they'd want it. Pretty tinfoil, but maybe just maybe. And so could be that that's what happened at Hardhome, is that Hardhome was some sort of trial run for the Doom, because it happened about 200 years before the Doom, and there's a maester that went to Hardhome and stayed there for 3 years and got all this information about the wildlings. Then he went back to Old Town and wrote down everything that he learned, and then he went straight back up north to the Wall again, and then seems like that was close to when Hardhome happened. So your conspiracy hour is that basically that was the maesters in Old Town, experimenting with how to kill dragons and blow up things, and maybe the Faceless Men were involved, and blah, 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 blah. That's all I can say about that. Hard to say. I do hope we get an answer about Hardhome. I love that quote about Hardhome and the fires being seen from the Wall. It's very creepy. Sorry, I was trying to highlight this one. Lake Twig, nice picture there. It's a flaming eclipse picture. Did Ned stash an egg or a sword to prove Jon's blood? Either is possible. Either is possible. It could have been waiting for him at the Tower of Joy. Absolutely. Lyanna's right there to give him instructions. Here's Rhaegar's harp. Put it in the tomb and tell Jon when he's ready. Rhaegar's harp, Valyrian steel sword, dragon egg, because the Targaryen babies used to always be given a dragon egg, so that would signify Jon's inheritance. Any of these things would make sense. Really like the dragon egg. Actually, that would be a cool thing. So Ned's got the mysterious satchel, little lump in there. No one can look at it. And never ask me about a Shardane. Never ask me about the lump in my saddlebag. It was a dragon egg. That would be cool. So let's talk about these weddings. I need to flip out to a different essay. It's going to be Blood of the Other. No, Moons of Ice and Fire, RLJ, a recipe for ice dragons. Yes, that is the text we are consulting. This is a good 2.5 hour script or something. I mean, it's just... All right, do you want to do Alice Karstark or Jane Poole first? Let's do Alice Karstark first. And guys, let me take a really quick potty break, actually. Been drinking that vitamin water, and it's got to happen before I read this. Hang on. And we're back. And I'll also remind you to click the like button. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Some 40% of you guys watching these videos haven't clicked the subscribe button. It's a very small favor that I'm asking of you guys. Click the subscribe button. And then hit the little bell next to it, or it's on this side, actually. I would appreciate it. Share the videos with your friends. Bloody, bloody, bloody. Back to the action. So I actually called this the second alchemical wedding in the Moons of Ice and Fire script. And by the way, let me just drop this in. If you want to read along, I'm not going to read directly from this, but I'm going to pull from it. This is Moons of Ice and Fire 5, R plus L equals J, a recipe for ice dragons. As the name implies, Jon is the symbolic ice dragon. So Jon is here. He's actually kind of performing the wedding like a priest. It's kind of funny, but this is Alice Karstark marrying Sigorn, the young Magnar of Then. It's from A Dance with Dragons. And this is the opening of the chapter, literally the first lines of the chapter here. R'hllor, sang Melisandre, her arms upraised against the falling snow. You are the light in our eyes, the fire in our hearts, the heat in our loins. Yours is the sun that warms our days. Yours the stars that guide us in the dark of night. All praise R'hllor, the Lord of Light, the wedding guests answered in a ragged chorus, before a gust of ice wind blew their words away. Jon Snow raised the hood of his cloak. The snowfall was light today, a thin scattering of flakes dancing in the air, but the wind was blowing from the east along the wall, cold as the breath of the ice dragon in the tales old Nan used to tell. Even Melisandre's fire was shivering, the flames huddled down in the ditch, crackling softly as the Red Priestess sang. Only Ghost seemed not to feel the chill. Alice Karstark leaned close to Jon. Snow during a wedding means a cold marriage. My lady mother always said so. So the wind is blowing off the wall like the breath of the ice dragon, which equates the wall with an ice dragon. And that's happened a lot of times, actually. The wall is very frequently compared to an ice dragon, and pretty much always in Jon chapters. And there's more about that in this essay in another section, actually. Sorry, I've got window craziness going on again here. 1 second. Where's the other window? There you go. The other window, he says, innocently. Beautiful. All right. So the wall's been directly compared to an ice dragon on many occasions, and now it's breathing like an ice dragon onto this wedding. And the cold ice dragon breath, it makes the flames shiver. So it's as if the fire had been turned cold. It's like the fire is freezing, literally shivering fire. It's freezing fire. It's a very cool way to imply it. And that's the whole point of what we're talking about here. The ice dragon represents Night's King and his dragon fire being turned cold. And so here we have this cold breath coming off the wall and turning this wedding, this very important symbolic wedding, cold. So shivering flame is a symbolic motif that turns up many times, and we don't, one version of it was at the Eyrie, for example, where there was blue-veined white marble that made the sunlight look chilly. And that's from the Signs and Portals 1 and 2 episodes that we talk about Sansa's chapters in the Eyrie. But the entire Eyrie, I'm sure you remember, it's like an ice temple. It's all made of white marble. It's compared to snow and ice. It's very cold up there. And then it starts to snow when she's there. She's out in the God's Wood. She gets covered in snow and does a whole bunch of Night's Queen symbolism and stuff. It's very cool. And like I said, one of the lines there was, even the sunlight looked chilly. So again, we're implying the sun being turned cold. Of course, the sun is a star. So chilly sunlight is the same way as implying a cold star. So there you go. The white marble's veined with blue there, which implies blue blood, and the others have blue blood. So really great symbolism. Love it. In any case, Alice Karstark is very easy to peg as an Ice Moon Maiden. She talks about this being a cold marriage, and then we get this line. The girl smiled in a way that reminded Jon so much of his little sister that it almost broke his heart. Let him be scared of me. The snowflakes were melting on her cheeks, but her hair was wrapped in a swirl of lace that Satin had found somewhere, and the snow had begun to collect there, giving her a frosty crown. Her cheeks were flushed and red, and her eyes sparkled. Winter's lady. Jon squeezed her hand. So, not again, just like when Val is given to us with snow white skin and blue eyes, it's not hard to. This is not cryptic here, unless you mean cryptic in the Corpse Queen sense. Alice Karstark is a Stark cousin. She's Winter's lady. She has white lace collecting snow, and it's giving her a frosty crown. So she's a Winter's queen. I don't know how many ways you want to say it. And then Jon has this really funny line, thinking about the right after she says, "Oh, if there's snow on a wedding day, it means a cold marriage." Jon glances at Queen Selyse and says, "There must have been a blizzard the day she and Stannis wed." Huddled beneath her ermine mantle and surrounded by her ladies, serving girls, and knights, the Southrun queen seemed a frail, pale, shrunken thing. A strained smile was frozen into place on her thin lips. So she, of course, does a lot of Night's Queen, Corpse Queen stuff. With Stannis, it's kind of mixed up. Like his Fire Queen does Night's Queen stuff, obviously, because Melisandre has the shadows. And then Selyse is the one who actually goes to the Night Fort with him and is frozen and cold. So, in any case, there you have that. But the point is, we're echoing Night's Queen and King, their sort of marriage or coming together. That's the original cold marriage. So that's what all these scenes are going to be parallel. So the Karstark sigil. Oh, by the way, when Rhaegar and Lyanna absconded to the Tower of Joy, there was this crazy snowstorm that gripped King's Landing for a moon's turn, and it was like it froze. The Blackwater Rush froze solid, which gives us the River of Black Ice symbolism that we just were talking about. And then they lit night fires to sort of, King Aerys was like going crazy at this point. So he had his pyromancers light night fires around the walls to sort of drive off the winter, just like Melisandre lights fires at the base of the ice wall to fight the others. So lots of cool long night symbolism when Lyanna and Rhaegar ran off, because that's just another echo of this cold marriage of Night's Queen and King. So getting back to Alys Karstark, the Karstark sigil itself is a white sunburst, which is also called a white star, and it's on a night black field. So the white star symbolism makes us think of dawn, and the white star in the hilt of the Sword of the Morning constellation, which kind of makes sense because dawn is associated with ice and the others, as I've talked about. And also, it's called the Sun of Winter, that white sunburst on a black field. So kind of gives you this idea of a winter sun, a cold sun. It's a sun that somehow isn't bright enough to like light up the darkness. You know what I mean? So it's like it's on a night black field. We'll get into this in a second, but check out this line right here. "Who brings this woman to be wed?" asks Melisandre. "I do," said Jon. "Now comes Alys of House Karstark, a woman grown and flowered of noble blood and birth." He gave her hand one last squeeze and stepped back to join the others. Stepped back to join the others, from whence Winter's lady came. So it's one of those others wordplay things where, you know, like the others are coming to the wedding and they are the attendants of Night's Queen. It's kind of cool. There's similar quotes with Queen Selyse when they have dancing later on in this chapter. Everyone freezes in place when a war horn blows. And then there's all this other symbolism. So it says, others had heard it too. The music and laughter died at once. Dancers froze in place, listening. So it's all this, I don't know, it's running through the whole chapter. And then it says, "Lord of Light, protect us," cried Queen Selyse. Other voices echoed the response. Melisandre's faithful, pallid ladies, shivering serving girls, Sir Axel and Sir Narbert and Sir Lambert, men-at-arms in iron mail and thens in bronze, even a few of Jon's black brothers. Lord of Light, bless your children. So everyone's being otherized here. You know, the Night's Watch are being otherized. And of course, Night's King was said to enslave his brothers with sorcery. And if you get into the symbolism of Sir Axel, Narbert, and Sir Lambert, they're all implied with white other symbolism. That's in the essay. I'm not going to read all that, but it's here. So yes, like I said, this whole attending is being implied through wordplay as being attended by the others and the ice dragon. You get the idea. So getting back to the wedding ceremony, there's a cool sex and swordplay line. And of course, sex and swordplay is the phrase that I use just to refer to George's symbolism, where he likes to compare swords and impregnating penises and the idea of sex and battle, marriage and battle, It's a constant theme through the whole thing. Ask Lady Barbie Dustin about it if you want to know more. So check this out. It says, like so much else, heraldry ended. Or no, I'm sorry. It says, the Magnar of Then stood waiting by the fire, clad as if for battle, in fur and leather and bronze scales, a bronze sword at his hip. So he's the Azor Ahai figure, and he's a warrior. He's heavily implied as a warrior, and he knows no fear. He's charging into this thing, better or worse, marrying a Westerosi woman, violating all the customs of the wildlings and stuff, sort of just making up new customs and stuff. Now, the sigil is really where this gets going, all right? So it says, like so much else, heraldry ended at the wall. The Thens had no family arms, as was customary amongst the nobles of the Seven Kingdoms. So Jon told the stewards to improvise. He thought they had done well. The bride's cloak Sigorn fastened about Lady Alice's shoulders showed a bronze disc on a field of white wool surrounded by flames made with wisps of crimson silk. The echo of the Karstark sunburst was there for those who cared to look, but differenced to make the arms appropriate for House Then. So House Then is all about bronze and also weirwood. They carry a weirwood staff, and they're from the north. And so instead of a white sun on a field of night black, which is the Karstark sigil, now we have a bronze and red sun on a field of white snow. So the white field of the Stark sigil is called an ice white field. So I think the white field of the Karstark sigil should be taken as an ice or snow white field as well, which is appropriate for a house now made up of a wildling Magnar and an old northern bloodline. So what we have here is a bronze and crimson sun sort of locked and surrounded in the snow. It's just like the fire at this wedding, which is shivering under the breath of the ice dragon. This is the sun fire, the solar fire of Azor Ahai being given to Night's Queen, being surrounded by ice and snow and being turned cold. He's becoming a Karstark. And the Karstarks, like I said, their sigil is called the Sun of Winter. So he's being turned into a winter sun, just like the frozen flames, just like all this crap we're talking about. So let's see here. Scrolling ahead. And then, of course, Melisandre's shadow babies parallel the creation of the others. And so when she marries the symbolic Night's Queen and King, there's a line to call out to that. And it says, the flame cast her shadow on the wall behind her, and her ruby gleamed against the paleness of her throat. So Melisandre's casting her shadows onto the ice wall. So think about shadow babies, but cast into ice. And you have the others, right? That's what I've been saying, is that if Mel's shadow babies parallel the other creation, then really all you have to do is flip this from fire to ice, and you have the creation of the others. And so Mel is casting shadows onto the wall. It happens like 3 times so far in A Dance with Dragons. It happens once with Stannis and once with Jon, where her shadow gets etched into the ice, cast into the ice. Jon's shadow is cast into the ice, and so is Stannis' shadow, because they're both Night King Azor Ahai figures, giving their seed and soul to make the others, etc., etc., etc. Ice shadow, pure water. So, scrolling on here, let's see if there's any more from the Sigorn and Alice wedding that I want to pull from, or if that's about it. There's some Jon death foreshadowing. This is the same chapter where Jon visits Cregan Karstark in the ice cells. Cregan Karstark himself is like a frozen Stark. He's covered in ice. He compares himself to Jon, and it says, rusted hinges screamed like the damned souls when Wick Whittlestick yanked the door wide enough for Jon to slip through. So Wick Whittlestick is the first person to kill Jon. He cuts his jugular vein. So here Wick Whittlestick is yanking open a door that's screaming like damned souls so that Jon can go into the ice cell. So it's very clear death foreshadowing for Jon being killed by Wick, letting through the door of death. His body is going to be stored in the ice cell. He actually sees his reflection in the ice once he goes into the ice cell and talks to Cregan Karstark. Jon looks at the ice and sees his reflection. He's like, wow, I could see myself here in the ice, just like Cregan. Anyways, that's all in Moons of Ice and Fire series 2, if you want the full scene there. But yeah, so that's the Alice Karstark wedding. Winter's Lady, Freezing Fire. You guys Digging that? What do you think? Yes. You guys are loving it. And I see you guys talking about the Ice Dragon short story from George. Strongly recommend that. It is very cool. Shows you how fascinated George is with ice. The little girl in the story is kind of like what I imagine Night's Queen to be, where she's just an ice transformed human being. She's buddies with the ice dragon. Adara is her name. And you notice in that quote, Jon was like, oh yeah, the stories that old Nan used to tell about the ice dragon. I think that George intends for his ice dragon fairy tale to be imagined as one of old Nan's fairy tales. That's why it sounds like it's sort of set in the world of ice and fire. So I think that's basically what George is giving us with that ice dragon, is a little bit of Westerosi fairy tale, if you will. So now we're going to jump over to a less fun wedding. It's very much a different side of the Night's Queen symbolism. Alys Karstark, she's a powerful warrior. She's fired up. She's threatening the Magnar. She's like, he better be afraid of me. Like, she's all piss and vinegar. She reminds Jon of Arya. She's very brave. She fled her corrupt uncle and the wedding they were trying to force her into. She fled all by herself on horseback all the way to Castle Black. So she reminds us of Lyanna very much. She reminds us of Visenya, of Val. Most of the Night's Queen characters are these Valkyrie-like warrior women. Absolutely. Jane Poole, however, is not. She's very much an abuse victim. She was horribly abused by Peter Baelish, essentially trained against her will to be a sex worker, a sex slave. So it's a very dark story, and her character is she's gone away inside here. She's going to be described in corpse-like fashion. So we'll have to talk about the difference in the sort of vibe of these two things. But first, let's address the symbolism so you can see what I'm dealing with here. So it says, and this, by the way, this is Theon going up to Jane Poole's chambers to bring her to the wedding out in the Godswood. That's the setup here. The hearth was caked in cold black ash, the room unheated but for candles. Every time a door opened, their flames would sway and shiver. The bride was shivering too. They had dressed her in white lamb's wool trimmed with lace. Her sleeves and bodice were sewn with freshwater pearls, and on her feet were white doeskin slippers, pretty but not warm. Her face was pale, bloodless. A face carved of ice, Theon Greyjoy thought, as he draped a fur-trimmed cloak about her shoulders, a corpse buried in the snow. So again, this symbolism is not subtle. She's a corpse. She's about to become a queen. She has a face carved of ice, pale, bloodless face. She's shivering. The flames are shivering too. So again, just like the Alys Karstark scene, we have shivering fire and a winter queen going to a wedding. And they're both Starks because Jane Poole is being passed off as a Stark and Alys Karstark is a Stark. So these are really, really close parallels. And again, what happens here at these Night's Queen weddings? Fire is being turned cold. It is shivering. That's what's happening. So very important. Even the black hearth, it symbolizes cold fire because it's a cold hearth. It's a place where fire should be, but it's cold. So, actually back at the Alys Karstark wedding, she asks, it's taking a long time, and she asks Jon, how much longer, Lord Snow? If I'm to be buried beneath the snow, I'd like to die a woman wed. So again, it's a twin line to this scene where Alys Karstark is being implied as a corpse and as being buried beneath the snow, just like Jane Poole is a corpse buried in the snow to Theon. So these scenes couldn't be more tightly paralleled, and they both come in A Dance with Dragons, the same book. So now the House Poole sigil is a blue circle on white, which is meant to represent a pool, obviously, but it also looks like an ice moon, or it makes us think of the winter lake symbolism of the others. The others' voices are like the cracking of ice on a winter lake. When people die a cold death, like Varamir or Jon, it's like falling through the surface of a cold lake. And of course, in Milton's Paradise Lost, Lucifer is trapped in a frozen lake, which, by the way, let's talk about that. the very idea of Lucifer, who is a dragon beast in Milton's Paradise Lost, being stuck in a frozen lake in the ninth circle of hell is a strong influence on what George is doing here. That's just the same idea. Think about it. In the center of hell is a frozen lake, and there's a Lucifer, the dragon, is trapped there. That's the same idea as Azor Ahai going into the Weirwood Net, being trapped by Night's King, having his fiery dragon seed turned into the others, who are like the cracking of ice on a winter lake. Think about that ice lake that Lucifer is trapped in, cracking open and letting the frozen Lucifer dragon out. That is the others' voices. That is what they're implying in their voices. And there's absolutely no chance that George is unaware of Paradise Lost and Milton and Lucifer and the frozen lake and all that shit. He's absolutely capitalizing on it. And I think it's very, very cool. Anyways, so House Poole has the blue lake symbol. That's their sigil. Now check this out. Ned's fever dream at the Tower of Joy, right? Lyanna is an ice queen also. You guys know that. There's a storm of blue rose petals blowing across the sky. And here's the cool thing. So Eddard hears Lyanna calling to him as he's waking up from the dream. Lord Eddard, Lyanna called again. I promise, he whispered. Leah, I promise. Lord Eddard, a man echoed from the dark. Groaning, Eddard Stark opened his eyes. Moonlight streamed through the tall windows of the Tower of the Hand. Lord Eddard, a shadow stood over his bed. How long? The sheets were tangled. His legs splintered and plastered. A dull throb of pain shot up his side. 6 days and 7 nights. The voice was Vayen Poole's. In other words, Lyanna's voice turned into the voice of Vayen Poole, because Jane Poole is an Ice Queen maiden, just like Lyanna. So I really love that. And if you look at this little dialogue, look at this. The voice echoes from the dark. A shadow stood over his bed. So Lyanna's voice becomes a shadow. That's Night's Queen creating shadows, right? And then it says, moonlight streamed through the tall windows of the Tower of the Hand. So it's being compared to the Tower of Joy. You've got the cold moonlight coming in because the others are always appear in the moonlight. And then if you go back to the Tower of Joy scene, the blue rose petals in the sky are as blue as the eyes of death, which I like to point out implies the eyes of the others in the sky. And of course, the others have blue star eyes. So it makes sense to see the eyes of death in the sky. They're just the others' blue star eyes watching the entire Tower of Joy scene because Jon is tied to the others magically. And then Eddard wakes up and Lyanna, the Ice Queen's voice, becomes Vayen Poole's voice, which helps us understand that House Poole, their symbolism is tied to the others and Night's Queen. And then we see, of course, Jane Poole here doing the Night's Queen thing at the wedding. So it's pretty tight symbolism. And I've got a super chat. Atris Rain. What if the gods don't know for sure who Azor Ahai is? Maybe that's why so many people get dreams visions, like a game of Chosen Ones instead of Thrones. You mean Azor Ahai Reborn? Well, I think multiple people are clearly going to be Azor Ahai Reborn. It's at least Jon and Dany. It could be 3 people, 3 heads of the dragon. So it could be Jon, Dany, and Euron. Those are my 3 dragon heads. But I don't know. It could be that the gods are casting a wide net. Certainly, like, Melisandre is changing her idea of who the Chosen One is. We don't know what Bloodraven thinks. So, yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, it depends on who you mean by the gods. I mean, I don't think the gods even exist anyway. So, R'hllor is just the personification of fire magic. If there's a great other, that's just Azor Ahai, Night King inside the Weirwood Net. And the old gods are the Weirwood, are the Greenseers. So, Dovekin asks, stoked to finally be around for a live stream. Well, I'm stoked too. Thank you for the super chat. Thanks for your content and all the work you've put in. Thank you, guys. And by the way, I get lots of comments like that on the YouTube channel. I don't always respond. I usually just heart and upvote them, but please know that it means a lot. Just a simple thank you for the entertainment. I am doing this to make a living and launch my career as an author. I'm trying to write books and stuff. But at the core level, this is like very much meaningful to me, and that I'm excited about the ideas. I'm showing these ideas to people, trying to get everyone excited about symbolism and mythology. So when people thank me, it means a lot. So if you're thinking about leaving a comment like that, please do. I love those comments. You are the wind beneath my wings. I All right, looks like I'm getting behind on Discord here. No, I got these two. Oh, okay. I was behind when you typed the message, and then I caught up. Cool. Very good. Thank you. Okay, so I see a couple other questions that you've put in here in the Discord, but they're a little off topic, and so I don't want to take that right now. I will take this one from Corliss Whitefire. When Dany has her final Wake the Dragon dream in Book 1 and feels the icy breath behind her, is that supposed to be the Great Other? If so, do you think it's simply Quaithe warning her of the Great Other, or is that actually the Great Other interfering with Quaithe's message? Hard to say. I don't know that the Great... I guess I don't know. I can't rule that out. I mean, if Quaithe is getting in her dreams and Bloodraven is getting in people's dreams, then maybe Azor Ahai, Night King in the Weirwood Net, who is my idea of the Great Other, could be reaching into people's dreams. Certainly could be reaching into Euron's dreams. So, yeah, maybe she is feeling that presence. That actually does kind of make sense, because Melisandre detects the presence of Bloodraven, even though they're not accessing the etheric realm through the same magical means. It does seem to all be one place. So, yeah, that could be. Symbolically, it certainly represents that. But it could be more literal, I suppose. Let's see here. So getting back to Jane Poole and her very uncomfortable wedding, we see Theon is playing the same role as Jon here. He's some sort of a half Stark, giving away the Ice Queen. That's pretty interesting, right? Jon gives away Alice Karstark. Theon is implied as a son of Winterfell. He's basically there to add legitimacy to the idea that this is really Arya, because he grew up with Arya, and symbolically Theon is half Stark and half Greyjoy, and Jon is half Stark, half Targaryen. So what does this mean? Well, it could mean that Night's Queen is a Stark, essentially. That it's not Night's King that was a Stark, but actually Night's Queen. Or Night's Queen's baby that became a Stark, if you like that stolen other baby theory. Makes sense to me, and it also makes sense when you consider the Blood Moon leaks, that we had a Stark Greenseer princess getting married and at the same time that the Long Night falls. So that to me would make sense if Night's Queen was a Stark in some sense, but hard to figure out if Night's Queen is Nissa Nissa's spirit coming out of the Weirwood, or if she's an actual flesh and blood person. I really want her to be a flesh and blood person like Melisandre. I think that makes the most sense, but we'll have to. I don't know. We'll just have to keep trying to figure it out. That's one of those really perplexing things that I have not decided on yet. So getting to the actual wedding. There's a great mythical astronomy line up above the treetops. A crescent moon was floating in a dark sky, half obscured by mist, like an eye peering through a veil of silk. That's cool because the idea of the moon... Well, I don't want to get into all the astronomy. That's going to be too much of a side. It's a cool quote, though. It's a moon eye, and it's in the sea because it's floating. So it's some good green sea talk here. I take this man, the bride said in a whisper. All around them lights glimmered through the mists, 100 candles pale as shrouded stars. Theon stepped back, and Ramsay and his bride joined hands. So this is our first symbolic depiction of the others being created. But it's coming at us from the mythical astronomy perspective, essentially. When the Night's Queen and King figures join, when Night's Queen says, I do, then we have the other's star eyes appearing in the sky. We have the implied as a meteor shower. So then the next sentence after she accepts the marriage, we're told, okay, I'm sorry. Forget that last sentence. So the pale other-like stars, they're followed up by this passage, which comes a couple of lines later, also suggesting the presence of the others here at the wedding. It says, once outside the god's wood, the cold descended on him like a ravening wolf and caught him in its teeth. And this is Theon. He lowered his head into the wind and made for the great hall, hastening after the long line of candles and torches, And those are the candles that were just described as pale stars. Ice crunched beneath his boots, and a sudden gust pushed back his hood, as if a ghost had plucked at him with frozen fingers, hungry to gaze upon his face. Winterfell was full of ghosts for Theon Greyjoy. So we've got a ghost with frozen fingers. I mean, that's pretty clearly an otherish type of suggestion. And again, these cold star-like candles are shining at the same moment, in the same sentence. So ghosts with frozen fingers, they're pulling at Theon. They're watching the wedding. They're lurking outside. And in specific, we don't hear them described until after Night's Queen says, I do. So again, it's implied that the wedding happens first, and then the others sort of appear and spring up. We even get black ice, just like at the wall, and just like during Rhaegar and Lyanna's absconding to the Tower of Joy, when the black water rush froze solid, it says, a hard white frost gripped Winterfell, the paths were treacherous with black ice, and hoarfrost sparkled in the moonlight on the broken panes of the glass gardens. So, under the snow lay gray ash and cinders, here and there a blackened beam or a pile of bones adorned with scraps of skin and hair. So under the snow, there are symbols of fire, ash and cinders, and a blackened beam like a burnt tree, burnt wood. So it's the same idea as Azor Ahai, a fiery person becoming transformed and frozen. It's implied all through here. Same idea, frozen fire, buried fire, snow on top of fire, etc., etc., etc. And then even the word beam could be like a light beam, but it's a blackened beam. So it's describing darkened sunlight, right? Which is fitting with all the dark Lightbringer long night symbolism. So it could be an accident, or it could be more wordplay. Let's see here. There's actually another black ice quote that I grouped in here. It's not during Theon's wedding, but it is in the same place as the wedding. It's in the Godswood in front of the Heart Tree. And it is in a Theon, a Dance with Dragon chapter. So it's in the same book. And it says, the Heart Tree stood before him, a pale giant with a carved face and leaves like bloody hands. A thin film of ice covered the surface of the pool beneath the weirwood. So that pool beneath the weirwood is the black pond. It's always described as cold, even though all the other ponds are steaming because they're lit by the hot springs. So we've got this one very unique cold black pond. Now it's frozen over with ice. So that gives us the black ice symbol. And like I talked about in the video, Ned's sword is called ice and it's black. So black ice refers to Ned's sword. And where does Ned clean his sword but in the pond? Now the pond is being implied as black ice too. So I kind of wonder if maybe there wasn't like an original sword that was tempered in this ice pond, Dawn or the original ice or something like that. But leaving that aside, at the wedding, Ramsay even has a veil of veined cheese, which implies blue veined cheese. And that's another symbol of the others. It's that blue blood, like the blue veined marble at the Eyrie. So very cool. Lots of other symbolism. And that's pretty much it for those weddings. So I think that when we finally get some sort of description of Rhaegar and Lyanna and their wedding, which I would assume probably comes via a Bran Weirwood vision, there'll be similar language to all of this stuff. It will be tied to all of this. Like I mentioned, there is... Let me go ahead and pull this quote. It's from Visenya Draconis. But it's pretty fun to read. And I am going to do a scripted video about Rhaegar, about both Rhaegar and Lyanna and Aegon and Visenya, because it's just too interesting. But, oh no, this is in RLJ for Ice Dragons. Sorry. Okay, here it is. And with that simple garland of pale blue roses, Rhaegar Targaryen had begun the dance that would rip the seven kingdoms apart, bring about his death and 1,000 more, and put a welcome new king on the Iron Throne. So right there, if you think about Rhaegar as a Night King, he marries Night's Queen, and what does that do? It rips the seven kingdoms apart. It brings death and corpses to the entire kingdom. That's because that is Azor Ahai, Night's King, marrying Night's Queen. They then create the others and launch the Long Night. It is Night's King and Queen that start the Long Night and lead the invasion of the others. Timeline heresy, timeline heresy. I know. But again and again, the symbolism implies that sequence. And so one more time, here it is. It says, the fall spring of 281 AC lasted less than 2 turns. As the year drew to a close, winter returned with a vengeance. A vengeful winter, guys. On the last day of the year, snow began to fall upon King's Landing, and a crust of ice formed atop the Blackwater Rush. The snowfall continued on and off for the best part of a fortnight. Whenever you hear the word fortnight, think of night fort. Fortnight, night fort. Because this is long night symbolism. So it would make sense to evoke the night fort, and that's what George means. Snowfall continued off and on for the best part of a fortnight, by which time the Blackwater was hard frozen, as icicles draped the roofs and gutters of every tower in the city. So again, you've got the frozen river of black ice symbol. You've got a vengeful winter. You've got the Night King absconding with the Night's Queen to rip the seven kingdoms apart and cover it in death. Snow is falling on King's Landing. The night fort is evoked. Then it says, as cold winds hammered the city, King Ares II turned to his pyromancers, charging them to drive off winter with their magics. Huge green fires burned along the walls of the Red Keep for a moon's turn. Prince Rhaegar was not in the city to observe them, however, nor could he be found in Dragonstone with Princess Elia and their young son Aegon. Not 10 leagues from Harrenhal, Rhaegar fell upon Lyanna Stark of Winterfell and carried her off. Think of Night's Queen being sort of taken back to the Night Fort. It sounds kind of like an abduction the way it's written. And then it says, lighting a fire that would consume his house and most of his kin and those he loved and half the realm besides. So their wedding also ignites a fire in that it destroys his house and consumes the entire realm. So think of, like I said, the others being destructive like fire. Azor Ahai's fire gets turned into this cold fire of the others, and then they literally destroy the kingdom. So it's a pretty great quote. Vicious, vengeful winter covers everything in snow. The cold winds hammering. Rhaegar lives. This happens all after Rhaegar gives Lyanna the frosty blue crown. So I mean, it's heavy stuff. And then, like I said, you go to the actual Tower of Joy where Jon was born, and we see the eyes of the others in the sky peering down. There's white shadows, the Kingsguard that are guarding the Night's Queen figure and her baby. And then you have Ned Stark as the last hero. His companions are gray wraiths, which gives you the black shadows of the Night's Watch symbolism. The Night's Watch are implied as black shadows. They sort of compare symbolically to the shadow babies, which are the opposite of the others. So you've got Ned and his gray wraiths challenging the white shadows, defending Night's Queen. They have a big battle, and then what does Ned do? He takes the symbolic Night's Queen other baby, Jon Snow. He takes it home and raises it as a Stark, just like baby Monster was going to be taken to Winterfell and raised with the Starks. And so this is why my Blood of the Other theory speculates that maybe at some point one of those Night's Queen and King babies, children that was turned into others, somehow wasn't turned into an other and became a Stark instead. Or somehow they had a baby that was a human baby. I don't know how that all works, but that's what it's implied as. So there you go. That's most of the prepared material I have for you today. I will take a few more questions here. Let's see what we're at. We're at 400 viewers still. We're 10 minutes shy of 2 hours. So this is looking great, guys. Thank you very much. Thanks for hanging with me here. Is it Monday? Yeah, I think it's Monday. Monday it is. Any book recommendations? Lake Twig asks with a super chat. Let me scroll up and honor you on the screen. You know, I am ashamed to say that I have not been reading a lot of books lately. I'm so immersed in making content. The way that I've been taking in sort of new ideas and stuff is mostly through like YouTube videos and podcasts. Quinn is really the book recommendation guy. Let's see. Let me think of what's the last book I actually read or listened to. that would make a good recommendation. You know what? I've got a recommendation. Hang on a second. I got it right here. This book is called Destiny Disrupted by Tamim Ansari. And it is called A History of the World Through Islamic Eyes. And what it is meant to be written as is basically a general, very much a layman's history understanding of the Muslim world that every Muslim person in the Middle East would sort of have as a basic understanding. And this book is written for Westerners. So it's not really getting into ideology or East versus West or anything like that. It's basically, once you read this book, you understand, you can sort of understand the shared history of people in the Middle East, people of the Muslim faith. And so I found it tremendously interesting. It's basic, the history of Muhammad and the history of Islam and the various sects and where they arose from. And it's really good information. It's, like I said, it's not really controversial. It's a book about Islam, but it's not controversial. Yeah, it's like just filling in some gaps in your history, and it helps us Westerners feel like we have a little more shared history. It's like a crash course. That's the phrase I'm looking for. It's like a crash course in basic history of Islam, written for Westerners, and it's written really well, and it's very entertaining. And anybody who loves history, I think, would enjoy the book. So once again, that's Destiny Disrupted. Just a random one I had laying around. Super chat. Did I? The super chat theremin. So the super chat theremin will come back. It is in a box. Quinn and I are still in a sort of a Airbnb type thing. It's we got a good deal on a place. We've just been chilling here. We will eventually move into some sort of incredible rancho YouTube studio house, but we're not there yet. So a lot of my stuff is still packed up, and theremin is there, but it will come back. Let me see if I make sure I didn't miss any super chats. Nope, I'm on top of it. If the Night Fort is where the others were born, what's up with the Heart of Winter? All right, that's a good question. I don't know. I don't know what's at the Heart of Winter. I think that there is something important there. It's either going to be a meteor or it's going to be a frozen weirwood thing of some kind. So it could be that the Night Fort is sort of like a parallel location. It could be that the meteor in the Heart of Winter has something to do with the magic force, but the ice magic that sort of pervades the area. Maybe that's why all the whites are resurrecting in that area. However, the weirwood is such a crucial element of it. That's why I am really thinking a lot about that weirwood organism being so unique at the Night Fort. It's like it's a talking weirwood face. It's huge. It spans. It's up above and down below. And so if the others were made there, it just seems to me like that's the obvious thing to look at. Like it's got to have something to do with that weirwood organism. So I really do think, and that the Night Fort is older than the Wall. Definitely something a lot of people are asking me about in the comments of the Night's King video is about when the Wall was built, timeline heresy related questions. Like, Night's King supposedly saw Night's Queen from atop the Wall, but if Night's Queen and King lived before the Long Night and the Wall was built after the Long Night, well, all I have to say is that the Wall is one of the biggest holes in the timeline that we have. It's never said that it was built after the Long Night to keep the others out. That's sort of inferred to us, but it's not said at all that that's the case. We're given multiple explanations for who could have built it. We have no idea when or why, really. Because if you were building a wall to keep the others out, there's no reason why it needs to be built out of ice. The others are the masters of ice. So why would it be an ice wall? It's only the spells that keep the others out, really. or if there's perhaps fused stone or oily black stone or some sort of fire magic stone underneath the wall. So the fact that the wall is made out of ice is deliberately confounding to us. The others seem like the ones who could make the wall, and yet it's supposed to keep them out. I don't even have a good answer for that. So, when was it built? Who built it? I don't know. So I don't really look at the dating of the wall as something that's going to disprove or prove another theory, because we don't know when the wall was built, by who or when, and it could have been built at first as just a stone wall that later had the ice added to it. So, yeah, I had to throw my hands up a little bit on that one. What I will say is that if we have humans wielding ice magic, like Night's Queen, or potentially like an other baby that became a Stark, maybe could use ice magic, then we have a figure who is fighting on Team Living, who is against the others, who could wield ice magic. Maybe that's the person who made the wall, is this other turned Stark, who I sometimes call the good other archetype. And I get into that more in the Blood of the Other podcast series if you want more on that. Cool. Super chats coming in at the buzzer. I love that. Thank you, guys. Regarding the Weirwood in the Night Fort, do you think it's likely the Night King is the Green Seer within it? Yes, I like that idea. So the face of the Black Gate is compared to the Grey King a little bit, because it looks like a face that's a person who's 1,000 years old but never died. And the Grey King did that. He lived for 1,000 years and turned gray and corpse-like. He's sort of half alive, half dead. And the Grey King symbolism is all Azor Ahai Green Seer symbolism. I don't know if there was multiple Azor Ahai people running around Westeros creating these similar myths, or if all these myths really do refer to one person. But the Grey King myth is all talking about Azor Ahai Weirwood Net stuff. So the idea of comparing the Black Gate to the Grey King could suggest that Weirwood organism is in some sense Azor Ahai or Night's King, that his spirit is in that very organism. If that's where he was making others, that kind of makes sense. If Baal the Bard is right that Night's Queen is the Weirwood, then he could be giving his seed to that Weirwood tree. He could literally just be hooking up to the tree, and the tree could be pulling his magic out and spawning others. And that's actually what happened. So that's the cool thing with symbolism, is you can think of a few different ways that it could play out in literal terms, and all of them make an interesting story, don't they? So I think it is going to be the conclusion of the regular story that's going to help us fill in the gaps and suppose, what may have happened. So, but think about it. The Green Seer Weirwood relationship is described as a wedding. Bran weds the tree. So it's not crazy to think that Night's Queen was the tree. Sophie Turner just gave birth to a baby girl. She named it Willa. Are you serious? Willa? That's fucking hilarious. Willa is, of course, the nursemaid at Starfall, whom Ned tells Robert was his, Jon's baby mama. So that's funny. I wonder if that's a coincidence, or if Sophie is making a Song of Ice and Fire joke there. Yeah. All right. That's funny. Did Euron summon the comet at the end of Game of Thrones? We don't know what he was up to at the time. Could be part of his plan. Well, I do wonder if all that Dragonbinder horn blowing that he did in A Feast for Crows has called the Red Comet back. If the Red Comet, let's put it this way. If I'm right about moon meteors causing the long night, which I think I am, and which the Blood Moon leak appears to confirm, then that would imply that the new long night that's coming is going to need some more meteors, right? Why invent a different cause for the long night if you've hidden the cause for the original long night? And if we get more meteors, that means we probably need the Red Comet to come back. George was originally planning to have a 5-year gap in the story, which would put 8 years between the original Red Comet appearance and the new one. But regardless of that gap being thrown out, the comet needs to come back if we're going to have more meteors. So if Winds of Winter, we open up the pages of Winds of Winter and everybody's looking at the comet again, just like a Clash of Kings, we will then go back to the Dragonbinder horn blowing in A Feast for Crows and wonder if maybe that called the comet back from the Oort cloud or whatever to come and return to the skies. I think that's very possible. So we'll have to look for that in the beginning of Winds, and we'll have to watch that comet, because of course comets are dragons, and so Dragonbinder could be Cometbinder. Hey, it's La Chapaleon, the Destroyant. Could the wall have been a frozen version of the Hammer of the Waters in Dorne, a tidal wave created by the children and frozen in place? Don't you mean the Squishers, Matthew? The Squishers clearly built the wall. Well, salt water doesn't freeze nearly so well as non-salt water. So it doesn't make sense for the wall to be made of salt water. However, the tear that drips on Bran from the Weirwood Gate is salty, or the drop of water is salty. So maybe there is salt water in the ice and it's magically frozen, and it's actually seawater that the Squishers, called onto the land via flood or something like that. Conceivably, the Children of the Forest can manipulate water magic. That's jury is open on that. Potentially, water is part of nature. The Green Seer magic seems to interact with all nature forces. You can skin change walruses and fish. Supposedly, the Farwinds are doing that. So that could be the children. If the children can manipulate water, then they maybe could just manipulate ice anyway. I don't know. We'll have to see. But that's a good thought. Definitely possible. Yeah, and as Tony says, I can't shake the idea that the others had something to do with building a giant ice wall. I mean, George literally describes the others and it says, well, they can do things with ice that nobody else can. So who built a 700-foot tall magical wall of ice? Well, maybe the people who can do things with ice that nobody else can. It does make a certain amount of sense. The problem is motive. Why would the others build an ice wall? Did they want to keep humans out of the north? That's possible. The others seem to be always threatening to invade Westeros, but maybe that's misunderstood. Maybe that's Westerosi bias. Maybe they really just want to keep the humans out of the north. And they made the wall to keep the humans out. I mean, that's definitely an old idea from the forums that some people like. Jasleen, mistress of the Discord, goddess of the Discord, even. Sharing the Discord link. You can get at Jasleen Song of Ice and Fire on Twitter, or you can just join the Discord, and that will, and then you'll get approved to join us. So, if you want to chat more mythical astronomy, that's the place to go. Paladin Pone, who hangs out on Discord. We saw in the show that the others can kill dragons with the ice javelin. You think we'll see something like that? Also, I think George got that from Aragon. Well, I don't know Aragon, but I do think the others will have weapons that can kill dragons. Yes, I like that idea. It makes sense. If Valyrian steel swords can kill others, we should have some dragon-killing weapons. I strongly suspect that Dawn might be a dragon-killing sword. There is so much to suggest that. Galadon of Morn and his magic sword... oh, God. Help me out. Oh, Jesus. Galadon of Morn's sword is very strongly symbolic of the others. He has a bunch of morning star symbolism. Galadon of Morn, Galadon, Dawn, as in sword Dawn, sword of the morning. The Just Maid, thank you. The Just Maid refers to Virgo and some other stuff, which again leads us back to Sword of the Morning symbolism. He killed a dragon. Then we've got Davos Dragonslayer, is some mythical figure who killed a dragon. And Davos, we've got a different figure called Davos Dane. So you sort of link those together. You have, Davos Dane killing dragons, or the Just Maid, Galadon of Morn killing dragons. And again, the black swords kill others. So maybe the white sword kills dragons. It seems kind of basic, but there are some clues that indicate that could be the case. I've also suggested that Dawn was the original ice, quote unquote. Not that it's literally made of ice, but that it was the sword used by the last hero, who was a Stark. And that's why the Starks named their swords ice, because Dawn is white and it looks like milk glass. Milk glass looks kind of like ice. The bones of the others look like milk glass, and they're made of ice, etc., etc., etc. So if Dawn is an ice sword, it might kill the others. You heard it here first. If it happens, Actually, you didn't hear it here first. You heard it on one of my videos like 3 years ago first, but I have been talking about it. 4 away. Galadon of Morn. Yes, it's right there. All right, and I think I'm going to go ahead and call it. I like to keep it under 2 hours. I'm just under. Oh, I'm ADD strikes again. 2 hours and 5 minutes. Whatever. 10 minutes just disappeared. Who cares? I will take last call for questions, and then I'll go ahead and wrap it up. Oh, Darkstar. So Darkstar, the name Darkstar implies a darkened sun, obviously. And yes, it's a reference to the Grateful Dead. And the song Darkstar has really cool ice roses and ice and fire symbolism that George is riffing on. So check out the lyrics to Darkstar by Grateful Dead for extra homework. And I've talked about that before. But Darkstar, the person, he is a Dane. His name is Darkstar. He's of the night. The word Darkstar implies, again, a sun being turned dark. Then there's one scene where he stands in front of the sun, outlined against the dying sun is the line. So you have this idea of he's covering up the sun is dying. His name is Darkstar. He's of the night, but he's a Dane and he's got Valyrian looks. He looks like a dragon lord. His hair is midnight black with a streak. It's like a silver glacier with a streak of midnight black in the middle. So midnight black gives you the long night symbolism. Silver glacier. So this really gives us the silver Targaryen hair being shown that it can be icy, just to the point of the super chat that we had at the beginning of this video, asking about the Valyrians with blue eyes. Can they look icy? Yes. Darkstar Dane, his silver hair is like a glacier with midnight black coming out of the middle of it. And he's blocking the dying sun. Are you getting the picture here? So on one side, we have Sword of the Morning Danes, all about sunrise, Sword of the Morning, bringing the sunrise after the dawn or after the night. But then we have Darkstar. It's like it's total yin and yang. It's this Night's King figure. There's another night-associated Dane figure called Vorian Dane, and he was nicknamed the Sword of the Evening. And guess what happened to him? He was thrown down by Nymeria when she conquered Dorne, and he was sent to the wall. Just like Night's King was on the Night's Watch. So you've got this darkness-associated Dane, just like Darkstar, and he joins the Watch. So very cool. And it's sort of just showing us that the darkness figures, the Night's King figures, and the Last Hero figures, they come from the same place. They're like two halves of the same whole. It's similar to the idea of Last Hero being the son of Night's King, who used to be Azor Ahai. So you can see how this whole light and dark thing is all tied together. Same thing with ice and fire. They have a similar root. They come from the same place. The ice magic comes from the fire magic of Azor Ahai being combined with Night's Queen. So there you go, guys. It was a episode full of magical alchemy. Talked about turning fire cold and freezing fire and all that. So I love this stuff. This is definitely some of my favorite topics. I noticed the videos that are about people tend to be more popular. People are always the most relatable as opposed to these esoteric, symbols. But I did give you the weddings and some cool Jon stuff there. So I hope you enjoyed that. And hope you enjoyed the alchemy too, because I like that. Tell us about the birdo. Oh, yeah. So the bird at the end of my video, that was Goose, in case you don't know. He's a little shit bird. He's a Loki figure in my life. Little Myers parrot. He's the instigator. He's the fire starter. He likes to dance and sing and get all scroosy, as we call him. His name is Goose, but he likes to say his name a lot. And he started saying, instead of Goose, he started saying Scragoose and Scragoosey and Goosey. And so it's become an adjective. It's kind of like getting swifty. If you like Rick and Morty, he gets Scragoosey with it. So that's what you saw at the end of the Night's King video. He was getting Scragoosey. That's about all I can say, guys. Thanks for the super chats. Oh, let me check the inbox one more time. Make sure I didn't get any more PayPals that I haven't answered. And it looks like I got them all. So thank you, everyone. Thank you if you send in a PayPal after the video has played. That's even more fun for me. And it all goes to the Moving Into a New House Fund, which is hungry. It's hungry. Let's put it that way. So thanks. Means a lot, guys, right now. Means a lot. I'll just say that. PayPal.me, Mythical Astronomy. You can join Patreon. And I do owe some people some new Patreon names. I promise to get those out before I make another video. But I really had to finish a Night King video, so I was going insane trying to finish that one. And yes, there you go. Is Goose controlled by Bloodraven? No, he's controlled by someone even more sinister than Bloodraven. He's a Loki he's an avatar of Loki, pretty much. So take care, guys. See you soon.